Let me just make it abundantly clear that this is not like a kind of a cult or culty. It is straight up a cult.
Welcome to Going In Blind. I'm your host, Zach Tidwell. My guest today was raised as a Jehovah's Witness and extracted himself from the religion at a very young age. And today he's here both to share his own experiences and to shed some light on some of the unfortunate realities of the religion. Please welcome Eric Ham. And to everyone at home, thank you for listening. Please take a second to help me grow the show so that I can keep delivering these conversations week after week for years to come. Subscribe, rate, and review the show in whatever podcasting app you're using right now, and check out the show notes to follow me on social media and YouTube as well. When you share your favorite episodes, tag me and use the hashtag GoingInBlind. You can also join my mailing list at zachtidwell.net. And if you know someone you think I should talk to, have them send me an email at contact.goinginblind@gmail.com. Brother, thanks for coming.
Hello, hello. How's it going?
It's going. I've been doing this thing for the last couple episodes where especially when it's someone who I have one specific thing that I'm really trying to focus on in these conversations, to just jump into it to save us time and give us more time to explore said subject. And so I want to get right into this. You grew up in the Jehovah's Witnesses, and now, which is questionably, I think, considered by many to be at least borderline or cult, maybe not borderline cult, but cult-ish, cult-y. There's a lot of aspects of it that are uh they're hard to swallow. And so we're going to you have left the church as an adult and as you got out on your own, and we're going to explore some of that today. So I don't know, you want to give people a little bit of background, I guess, on your family history with the church, and then we can get into your experiences growing up and walk through it in kind of a chronological timeline and digging into some of these specific areas of the religion and the more questionable practices and things going on there.
Yeah, for sure. I guess I just wanted to start with some amount of disclaimer saying that like I'm no expert. There's people out there that are, doing the good work and like being activists against this religion. I have always I feel like there is like some amount of responsibility on my end to at least share what I went through and let people know like what's going on. Cause otherwise, this religion just kind of looks like from the outside, just kind of like people don't really think of it past like, hey, there are those people that come knock on your doors. And that's just always been the running joke. Not understanding that there is something more nefarious going, even sinister. So I'm by no means like I don't have any talking points. I have my own experience and I have a good amount of knowledge on what's going on with that organization. Um, but I've always wanted to have some long form discussion about it. And I've like tried sitting down in front of a camera, in front of and just like making some sort of YouTube video, if anything, just for myself, like just like some sort of cathartic exercise and being able to spill my guts and say what I need to say. But I never can. I always end up rambling and I never follow through with it. It just doesn't feel right after a little bit. So I'm excited because I also never bother talking too much to my friends about it, thinking that I'm gonna like maybe bore them. Like I'm gonna leave it to like whatever questions they ask, I'll answer it, but I'm not gonna sit there and drone on about this religion that really doesn't affect them in any way, as long as they know it's bad. Don't get near it. Don't let anyone get near it. I'm happy with that. But to be able to speak my piece, I feel like is something that's been um long overdue for well over a decade. I didn't leave as an adult. I left as a teenager, and so I'm happy to finally kind of say whatever comes to mind, and hopefully it'll feel less rambly, less tangential, and a little bit more tethered to just explaining it to a friend.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a reason. Well, I guess there's a couple of reasons I don't do solo podcasts. I started this because I wanted to talk with interesting people. So me removing the other person from it kind of defeats that purpose. But also, monologuing is not easy. It's even,
No, it's an art.
yeah. And so, I mean, the people who can do it, that's incredible. But, for you to explore all of this, and I mean, that this is it's the entirety of your life. There's a lot there to pick apart, and so I'm excited to be able to kind of dive into this because I didn't even realize, kind of like you touched on, I and it's been interesting in me looking into this. I feel like it's also made me understand where you come from on things that we've talked about in the past in private, and just seeing, because of the way that this religion is seems to be deliberately obscure, and to have removed itself from society, which is another thing that you kind of see in cults where yes, you do remove the lower members from society, you keep them undereducated, you keep them underinformed, and to kind of keep them a slave to the system. And in your case, I think you're probably more on the minority in the sense of leaving, because when you do leave, you get it's like or disfellowshipped and then shunned and excommunicated from your family. So I want to let's start with you left as a teenager. What led to that? What necessitated you making that decision as a teen to leave?
Yeah. Well, so my story as far as making my way out was straight up just my hormones. But before I get into my story, I do want to clarify, you mentioned that this religion is borderline culty, cult. It's not borderline. Like a cult isolates their members from their friends and family in the outside world. They punish doubts and questions, and um, they also require like an inordinate amount of sacrifices from their followers, and that's exactly what's happening.
How so?
Um, so we're gonna get into that for sure, but let me just make it abundantly clear that this is not like a kind of a cult or culty. It is straight up a cult. And then I also have like the bite method pulled up here for what authoritarian leadership is and cult behavior is. And we'll get into all that, but I just wanted to make it abundantly clear. This is absolutely a cult. And people often think about what a cult is. Like anytime I mention like, oh, it's a cult. And people are like, well, what do you mean? Like the Catholic Church is a cult. And I'm like, you see, like most people, when they think of a cult, they think of people in gowns with candles and a seance and smoke and like, it's almost like this romanticized version of like something cool and spiritual that's happening. And, honestly, like, the Orthodox Church, the Catholic Church has all that going for it. Sure, if you look at a ceremony, it can look a little, I don't know, culty, creepy, whatever words you wanna put on it, but the way they handle their members is absolutely not culty. You can come and go as you please. Like, if your family is so Catholic that they decide like, "Oh, you don't believe anymore, we're not gonna talk to you," that's on your family. That's not the Catholic Church is doing.
It's not a systematic thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we'll get into, like, exactly what these guys are doing, but it is, by all means, a cult. So I wanted to make
Yeah.
that abundantly clear.
Yeah.
The way
And
I found my way out of this was, because of how the whole system is set up, um, I got caught sneaking out of the house, sneaking out of the house, taking my mom's car. I was being a bad boy by all means. I was sneaking out of the house. I was going to see a girl and we were doing things.
Were you bumping
Um,
uglies?
Unfortunately, no.
So it wasn't even worth it.
No, like, I wish we did, like, we were keeping it dry. There might have been, you know, other things happening,
Yeah.
but not the full on, which is sad to look back at. But, here we are. I got caught sneaking out, and, whoever it was, my mom or my sister that noticed the car's gone, I'm gone, you know, I I I look at my phone at like 5 in the morning or whatever it is and like see like 20 missed calls and I'm like, "Oh shit, I finally I've been doing this for like maybe 6 months pretty consistently. Like it if not like I want to say maybe twice a week, maybe 3 times a week to see this girl. And so what happens in the church whenever you get caught doing something that is uh seen as sinful, which is ridiculous the amount of things that are put in the same category. Um, Basically, you're left with an ultimatum of, "Hey, you need to tell the elders and you need to go confess, or I'm gonna tell them for you and they're gonna pull you in." And a lot of the terminology that I'm gonna use, I'm struggling because I went to the Spanish congregation, so we had, words in Spanish, but, um, it's something interesting to know that, like, how cults start to change the way people speak and the verbiage that they use. So a lot of the stuff, like for example, calling their people elders, which is kind of hilarious. Like, at any other church, they don't even call their church a church. They call it a kingdom hall. And when you meet up for church, they call it a meeting. And
Yeah.
there's so many little things here where like I could just talk to you, but I'm also gonna have to interject and explain what word I'm using and why I'm using it. You know what I mean? And it's kind of
Well,
awful. It's kind of why it's terrible to try to just have this conversation in a monologue form, right? At least I'm trying to explain it to you as my friend, right?
yeah.
But anyways, I get caught and um so my mom's like, "Hey, like you need to tell the elders where I'm telling them for." So I forgot how it went down. Maybe she just automatically told them like, "Hey, my Eric's being a bad boy, basically." And so you get pulled into the little room. In Spanish, we called it the cuartito. It just means like the little room, right? And you get interrogated by a couple of elders. And elders are seen as like the pastors or
They're the senior
or
members of your congregation.
yeah, the ministers. There can
And
be
they're
senior members,
and they're all
but
male in this
they're
church.
all exactly, they're all male, but what's funny is that you can have an older person in the church, it's not an elder. You can have a 20-year-old elder. It's just like a ranking. And so you get pulled in and you talk to a couple elders. And in my experience, like they they had to they didn't have to. They were asking questions that were far too personal. And at the time, you don't think anything about it. You think you're just supposed to spill your guts and say whatever they're asking for, because these people are speaking through God,
Well, and
you know?
I'm gonna interject here. That's a thing in this church when you're in the senior memberships. This is also part of why it is all men. They are supposed to be. There was a change somewhat early on in the religion. It was like 60-ish years into the religion where this became a thing where these positions were all appointed and they were supposedly appointed through God. So it's the guy who first moved from what was a democratic system into a theocratic system, being like, well, I was appointed by God, and now I'm going to appoint Bob from God, and Bob will appoint more from God.
Yeah. I mean, and it's funny, like, because they wield that around, but then they're also very unspiritual about it in a weird way. Like they don't even act like it's like I don't know. I don't even know how to explain that specific thing and what it looks like when they say that it's God through them because they don't even act like it. You know how other like there's like the what are they called? Like, I wanna say the Pentecostal type church people that will start speaking in tongues, and they really play the part. They act like
They like
God is, like, talking through them. They don't even bother with that song and dance or anything like that. Like, it's just straight up coming from their head.
yeah. And so so I get that you get caught, you get taken in, you're getting interrogated, and they're kind of crossing boundaries. So for you, like what line is being crossed? And is it these lines being crossed that does make you decide to say fuck it?
No, not at all, right? So, they're asking questions that are far too personal, and what I did wanna say is that I realized after the fact that I wasn't alone, and I'm lucky enough that, like, my situation, like, you know, I was sneaking up and I was, like, going with a girl that had nothing to do with the religion, but most of the time in these situations, it's, like, 2 kids within the church that were caught messing around, and the elders will dig into both of their stories and wanna know details that are far too personal, and, like, it
Creepy
for
and like that.
yes.
Yeah.
For no other reason than their own kind of gratification, and there's so many stories like this, and like I said, I'm on one end where I didn't have to deal with that same amount of shame and embarrassment where, like, me and the girl that I'm messing with are both being put on blast, and then all of a sudden, everybody knows our stuff, and that's kind of part of what they do, like, the culture of, like, gossip is very strong. So if you get pulled into one of these rooms and spill your guts thinking that it's gonna be some sort of secret between you, them, and God, like, you better believe it's gonna get around and everyone's gonna know. And this, again, it's a cult. So the entire congregation is pretty much cut off from the rest of the world. They don't have a life outside of the church. So as soon as somebody is going through some amount of drama, it could be something way less, um, scandalous, but everyone's gonna know about it. And it's part of what starts to dominate your thoughts, your behavior. It's like it's emotional manipulation for
Well, and
sure.
when your scope of the world is so narrow because you're stuck within that system, I would imagine even then, obviously, when there is that gossip that it obviously, or at least sounds like it's intentionally kind of planted to so that there's some sort of, or maybe to feed some sort of repentance out of you or the person of the targeted person there, that I would imagine that that's magnified a little bit. But like for you, I mean, your whole family is in that system. What made you leave out of that experience?
So after getting caught, you can be repentant in the moment, and really, there's no way for them to know because what I did is I just dug down and I was like, you know what, guys, she's the one. I don't feel bad. Y'all don't get it. And, it's so silly to think about, but that's where I was at, and because I showed no real remorse, I ended up getting disfellowshipped, and that basically at that point, they cut me off, or my family was cut off from me, or I was cut off from my family, however you wanna put it. They are taught to say that I cut myself off from them, right? And that's how they think about it. But so the decision to leave isn't necessarily, at this point, mine.
Okay.
There's a lot of people that get caught in this very same limbo where they get kicked out, they're disfellowshipped, their family's not talking to them. But because they did whatever sin, quote unquote, they're now disfellowshipped. Not only are they held to be silent and they're ostracized because now once you're disfellowshipped, a lot of these people still believe. So they wanna get undisfellowshipped, and the course of action you have to take is you have to keep going to the meetings super consistently, which everyone already was. You already were very consistent. You keep showing up to the meetings. You have to show up a little bit late so that way there can be no conversation had with you and nobody can see you. and you have to leave just a little bit early so that no one can see you and talk to you. You are
So they just
completely cut off from your entire social circle. Your entire social circle was already within the walls of the Kingdom Hall, and now that you're disfellowshipped, you are not allowed to talk to that only circle that you have. This
what
is the level.
how long is that like I'm assuming it's not some cut and clear process where they're like, okay, we do this for 9 weeks. Oh, to
Well, you'd be
you.
shocked.
Oh,
You'd be yeah,
tell
it's
us.
this
Yeah.
this is a fully bureaucratic system. So, it's 6 months. I think they've changed it. I think they've tried to open it up and make it a little more lenient. As far as I know, they're trying to be nicer or whatever the word is. They're getting sued for, like, human rights violations in other countries. Point being, there is a bureaucratic system that they have, and they are fully, like, held to it. So, let's just say the way it worked for me, I kept going. I still had a little hunch or a little bit of belief. I was, like, 16, and I think I was trying to get back in before my sister's wedding, and it, like, could have timed out perfectly to where, like, I could get back in within 6 months and go to my sister's wedding. And so you then, after 6 months, if you're super consistent, you write some letter, saying, why you're repentant or how you're repentant or whatever it is, and it's just them deciding, are you saying the right words? Because, I didn't say this before, but when they're pulling you in and doing this confession, I could have just, like, acted. I could have just sobbed my eyes out and be like, "I'm so sorry," and if they would've I probably would have not been disfellowshipped, I would have been publicly reprimanded. When you get disfellowshipped or publicly reprimanded or right in the Spanish congregation, it was like you get censored, publicly censored. In the
That
middle
sounds
of the
pretty
meeting
accurate.
in the middle of the meeting, they will, like, because they have, like, announcements halfway through, and sometimes it'll be like, "Hey, guys, there's gonna be this event," or whatever, but amongst those announcements is so and so has been disfellowshipped, so and so has been publicly censored, so and so has been soft censored, if it was just like a slap on the wrist.
But they
But, like,
announce it out loud.
yes, and everyone knows
Wow.
immediately, and they know how they need to act.
And
So the
so then
moment your name
there's this charade falling in line with, okay, this was a soft censor, this was a hard censor, or disfellowship, and everyone just plays their role.
Yeah, everyone knows exactly what it means and what they have to do moving forward. So if you were disfellowshipped, um, then everyone knows, like, okay, that person's dead to us now until the announcement that so and so has been reinstated.
And then it's like a switch is flipped, and
Yes,
then you're welcome back, brother Eric. Like,
literally. Yes.
wow.
Yeah.
And for you, I mean, I know you wound up going a different path, but either and along this timeline, even though you were still investigating and toying with the idea of going through that process, you're 16, so you're still living at home with your
Mhm.
parents. Do they still act in accordance with this disfellowshipping, or at least when you were in the censoring phase, they act in accordance with that while you're at home and
For
throughout
the
the
mo
entirety of the day?
Yeah, for the most part, there was like my mom quit talking to me, um, unless it was, like, necessary.
Well, that's just women. She's giving you the silent treatment.
Yeah. Um, but no, yeah, like, there was like my sister pretty much quit talking to me because she doesn't need anything from me and does, so, like, by all means, like, things immediately change. Like, my extended family, which I was very, very close to, like, I wanna say I had, like, 30 cousins. I'm exaggerating, but, like, it was a lot, and we were all living in the same small town and believing in the same stuff. Immediately, no contact. with people that I grew up with that I'm our family. And to me, we're as good, if not more than siblings, you know?
So, I mean, it's over until you've gone through this process. And in the middle of that process, what did you emancipate yourself? What
No, so I'm lucky. Again, I'm fortunate that my dad is an atheist and he always was. So if both of my parents were Jehovah's Witnesses, there might have been a higher likelihood that I might have even got kicked out of the house. And this happens all over the country, all over the world. Where kids that are, 16, 17 get disfellowship and uh it doesn't happen as much for like the situation that I was in. But like for example, if a kid comes out as gay and is like, you know what, I am gay, and I'm just I don't know what to do about it. I don't think I can do anything about it. And it's just not changing. Those kids get kicked out.
in 2025?
Yes.
Is that because it's a Christian-ish, Christian adjacent-ish religion?
They are the one true Christians.
And so what is there, because there's all sorts of weird stuff when you start digging into this with you see the number 144,000 come up a lot, where
Sure.
that's who's going to heaven, and it's all based. You hear about the shut door policy, which is all kind of goes back to this whole ideology was initially centered around one guy making predictions that like the end is near, the end is coming, and then when it didn't come, he hand wavy back kind of justified his failed prediction as, oh well, it spiritually happened. And okay, well, there's
Yes. Yeah. That definitely
spiritual
happened.
these
Yeah.
spiritual comings, and you see this time and time again in the history of that, and or in the history of the religion. I'm sure probably still happens today. Why, I guess when they're talking about all of this, and especially with that weird mental gymnastics routine that is going on there, why are they the one true Christians? What is their, I guess, their argument to being that? Because I've also heard that, or not heard, I read that there's this idea that the Holy Trinity is three separate entities as well, as opposed to, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit being the same thing. Can you explain or speak to any of that? I know that was a lot.
Yeah. So I know that one of the first things you mentioned was the 144,000. That gets mentioned a lot. I mean, they have a lot of wacky beliefs, and every religion has its own claim for why they're the number one or the one true religion. Um, so to sit here and like just start picking apart all their dogma, um, I'm not an expert in. I can explain a little bit on it.
Yeah.
But the basically 144,000 is like the number of people. Basically, that's who they imagine is Congress. They're gonna elevate, they're gonna ascend to heaven. And if you had some sort of like inkling that that's you, then that's you. And you're gonna get to be in heaven with Jesus and God and be some sort of like ruling class of people that live in heaven. I guess Congress or like parliament, right?
So how do they navigate that in a congregation? Is that kind of fed that like all of you are
Everyone
going?
so everyone else is they believe in a paradise earth. They believe that the world is going to get just pummeled by Jesus and his angels and just completely destroy the earth and all its governments, and then they're just going to rebuild it back to like the entire earth is going to be the Garden of Eden, and everyone else is just going to live on earth like Garden of Eden style. And obviously, in their head, it's a little more modern. They imagine they're gonna have homes, but like, lions are gonna be eating grass, and there's not gonna be any pain or suffering in the world, and like it's really wacky. But so the 144,000, like I don't think there I knew one person in my congregation that claimed to be that person. Like, these people are few and far in between, but it's as easy as saying like, "Oh, I wanna go to heaven. I think I want that. I don't wanna live on paradise earth." And they kinda just have to take your word for it.
Wow. That
Yeah, but
is
so
just kind of bonkers to stop and like process the fact that, okay, there's and that's it's interesting. Like I dated a Mormon girl in high school for a brief period, and like they believe in these almost different levels of heaven that seem
Mhm.
similar to this, where there's basically like, for them it's I if I remember correctly, I'm 29 now, so it's been a hot minute, but there's everyone goes to heaven. There's just basically different levels of heaven where like one is, it's heaven, but it's hey, I'm in heaven versus like, man, I'm in heaven versus like, damn, dude, I'm in heaven. Like these just these different these escalating echelons of like
Right.
bliss. And that's strange that I guess
Mhm.
basically everyone that you read into is like, yeah, I don't think I'm gonna experience that. I'll just mind my P's and Q's here and shun Susie when she needs to be shunned. And
Yeah. No, yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, they only have like the two-tier system kind of. Like you have your rank here as a Jehovah's Witness, but you could be the highest ranking, or no, I think technically all the highest ranking Jehovah's Witnesses, they have a governing body right now. I think they all are technically anointed to be part of the
all
144,000. But
men, all selected
yeah,
by God.
for all white men, American born, yep. Um, well, actually, they have a black guy, so we're
Hey.
doing pretty good.
Yeah, had to
Uh,
diversify.
but yeah, I think so. Everyone else is kind of happy to be, and the way they justify it is like, they're like, well, like all our pleasures are carnal. Like everything we know and love is here on earth, where earth is made for us. So, they just leave it. They believe they're gonna live in this like endless, eternal life on paradise earth, basically.
On
And like
something, go ahead.
the way they sell it to children is like, "Hey, like, do you like lions and tigers? Like, well, you're gonna be able to have a pet lion or a pet tiger, like that in your head as a kid Jehovah's Witness, that's what you're looking forward to, which is kind of funny. But
Yeah. I mean, they just get you get you hooked early on. Something I
yeah.
was really curious to talk to you about, and I think you almost just, I think what we were just talking about almost kind of touches on it, maybe in a lateral way. Something else that I read, and you and I have spoken about this in private, and I kind of forgot about it until I started reading about it. Like, the members of the church basically don't interact with society, and not just in the sense of like they're minding their P's and Q's. Like it is, you're not supposed to interact with normal society, which is like we already kind of touched on the isolating the members from people who are outside of the sect, and also, limiting their, again, this is from what I read, so please confirm or,
Mhm.
shoot any of this down if I'm wrong on it. Talked about a very almost like old school, obviously a patriarchal system if it's all men leading, but also believing that, women should still be in the home, not be educated. No one should be pursuing higher education. You really shouldn't be doing things to stand out. And that to me
Right.
poses, and it's funny, especially in the like not standing out thing, that reminded me of like in boot camp, they make you speak in third person and you don't have an it, is everything is this recruit, and they're stripping you of your individuality, and that is a technique that they use for a reason. That almost seems, in a less direct way what they're doing, in the sense of hey, you should not be stellar, or you shouldn't be outstanding, you shouldn't be good at the things that you're passionate about. But with the also, I mean, it seems like they dissuade people from pursuing any form of higher education except for trades, and then the occasional, well, you can go to this school because we need doctors in our in the church,
Yeah.
and it's from in
Mhm.
a pre-approved school.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah. That's certainly how it goes. Like you feel like you have a certain amount of autonomy, but you're entirely discouraged from pursuing whatever thing. But like, it's funny because if you just decide against all of it and you're like, no, I'm gonna go to school, I'm gonna become a lawyer, they really can't like do anything direct, but you're gonna be on thin ice the whole time. They will be watching you closely. Like any mistakes
Mm.
you do or any kind of fall off on like your attendance will be immediately like, hey, what's going on here? So like that would be the way they kind of hold on to you when you do decide to become like something like a doctor or a lawyer, because some of them, very, very few people have done it. But what's hilarious is that if you do go through that path, and you make it through still a Jehovah's Witness, you are regarded as like such a stellar, like you made it against the odds because the likelihood of you going to college and coming out the other side still a Jehovah's Witness is so low.
Because you've
But
been opened up in I mean, you've been exposed to all of these ideas outside of the church and free
yeah,
thinkers.
exactly. And so
Wow.
that's their main fear. But if you do make it through that murderer's row of, you know, your spirituality, that you will be held at a very high esteem within the church. And like that's a quick way to become like a high ranking member in the church is being like a lawyer and Jehovah's Witness for
And
sure.
then they celebrate it if you've made it and stuck around.
Yeah. And then they start using you for all kinds of nefarious reasons.
That is so absurd. But I mean, I don't even know what to think of that. I mean,
I mean, it's a shitty religion.
yeah, well, I mean, it, I mean, it's so,
It's a particularly divisive one, you know. So
yeah. Do
it's
you,
yeah, continue.
do you, because coming back to they think that they're the only true Christians factor of this, which I guess that's the case with any religion, really. Like when when it comes down to it, and some will be more combative about that than others, but what is it that they believe separates them?
There's so many little things that like to them add up to like the big picture. And so, yeah, there's not like the one thing that they hold on to that's like, this is the thing, especially because it would have been like the end of the world is happening 1914. That's when it would have been like, man, if Jesus came down, what a score.
Well,
But
and perfect timing. I mean, with World War One, and for people at home, that was an actual, basically the guy who did start Jehovah's Witnesses. Like that was his initial, actually his initial prediction. Like he started it in about I think 1870. I think his first prediction was 1874, and when that didn't happen, he was like, it's 1914, and then so like this is a real
mhm.
date when Eric's referencing that. But
Oh yeah. And yeah, what's funny about 1914, I think they did like predict part of their predictions were that like there would be some amount of distress amongst all of Earth's kingdoms, and then Jesus will come down and just wreck everyone while they're all fighting each other, kind of thing.
that sounds like a
And
fortune cookie reading, though. Like that's so
right,
obscure.
but yeah, so to now when you ask them that question, like, what is it that makes you know that it's real? One, they're just gonna say, I know because I know. Very circular reasoning. But, I think if you were to dig deeper than that, they're gonna give you much more roundabout answers, so kinda self-fulfilling questions or leading type questions, um, where it's like, "Okay, well, in the Bible, it said that, you know, God's people will do this, and then in the Bible, it says that God's people do this, and Jesus said that, God's church will do this. And so they're like, look at all these things that are in the Bible. We check off those boxes.
Do
But
they
that's to give a very like vague answer on. That's not how they hook you. They don't hook you with some like kind of reasonable way to be like, okay, yeah, this is the one true religion for sure. It's little emotional things that they do, um, that slowly add up, and then you're in. And
like what?
so like let's just say I knocked on someone's door and they like accepted to have a conversation with me and they were open. Um, we're gonna show like verses in the Bible that are a little bit less talked about, and we're gonna all of a sudden become an authority on biblical matters because we're bringing up kind of obscure knowledge, something like,
Uh,
um, this is the verse in the Bible where it says God is Jehovah, and that's his name. And most people don't know the verse off the top of their head. Psalm 83:18, right? Like it's not one of those verses that everyone recites. It's not like John 3:16,
and
right?
so you're appealing to authority almost there and
Oh,
asserting yourself.
exactly. But
Wow.
then you're also being like, listen, like, have you ever said God's name? And most people are like, no, I just refer to God as God. And they're like, how about you say God's name? And they're like Jehovah, and they're like, doesn't that feel great? Like something like that,
Grab
right?
your
You're like,
shoulder. And doesn't that
yeah,
feel
like,
good, brother?
yeah, like, like you're actually saying God's name. This is how he wants to be referred to at, like little things like that, where and then maybe they'll pull up like a verse at the end of the Bible saying something like and then the earth will be a paradise. I'm not I'm paraphrasing,
Yeah.
but something along the lines of there will no longer be tears or pain, and the world will be joyous, and this or that. And they're like, don't you think that sounds like what God wants for us? And you're gonna be like, oh yeah. And then you're like, how about you take a Bible study with us and you find out exactly how you have to live for God to grant you this beautiful life that he's promising in the Bible.
All very
And
leading questions.
yes. And that's how I remember knocking on someone's door, and like that would be the pitch.
Do you remember how old you were when, or in general, how old people are when they're starting to be put out to start recruiting like that?
As soon as you can walk and talk, it's like they kind of use
Really?
you as like the cuteness factor.
Oh, and your
Like
little
they'll
little
they'll
tie.
yeah, exactly. Like they'll knock on the door, and as soon as you can like put together a sentence, they're like, "Hey, like my son's gonna give you this pitch."
And who's
And there
gonna shut a
again, we're
door
using
in a kid's face?
exactly we're using emotions, baby. So as far back as I can remember, like Saturdays, I was in a car amongst other people. We're going around the neighborhood. We have a list of addresses that we know or suspect that are Spanish speaking that we're gonna go knock on these doors.
I know as a child, it's not like they're going to teach you these coercion techniques, but as you got older, like, the pointing to obscure scriptures or and asserting yourself there as the knowledgeable authority and then asking these leading questions that kind of pull agreement out of someone. Were these, do you remember these being explicitly taught to you as a to be manipulative in that way?
No, you're not being told that it's manipulative. You're being told, I mean, you're just being taught a doctrine, and you're being taught like, hey, these are very powerful verses within the Bible. And they're very like to answer your question, no, like you're not being taught that you are manipulating people. But looking back at it now, I think that they just kind of drive it into you. You're like from a young age, the verses that you're taught, because these are the ones that I remember. are the ones that are just gonna get you emotional, and so that's what you wanna share. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So these are the verses that are kind of taught to you as a kid that make you feel something emotions, whatever emotion they're trying to get from you, and then that becomes what you want to share. So the conniving level of it is not. I don't even think they understand how. Like I think they fell onto it by accident. Like the how powerful they are is kind of like dumb luck.
Mhm. Yeah, it's just it's developed over time and it just happened to work out that way.
Yeah, or natural selection kind of thing.
Wow. And I know you had alluded to you had some specific things that you wanted to address here. What have I not opened the door for here that you feel attention needs to be brought to in regards to the what crosses the line here from it, it being it not just being this obscure religion that it's people coming and knocking on your door to no, this is a cult. We just it's not in your face all the time, so you don't realize it, or a lot of people don't realize it.
Yeah, I mean, um, number one, at least what I experienced was the family or the social dynamics I already explained to you. Most of the time they like they will isolate you, or not all the time, or not most of the time. Like if they get you, they're gonna isolate you from the world and from everyone but the church. So the the way they handle um and treat their disfellowship people is like the immediate, like for me, something that I suffer and the one that people are suffering from the most right now in the world that have gone through this, that's the immediate thing. Losing your family. I'm fortunate that, I still have my dad, and he kind of forced my mom's hand into still having a relationship with me, but most people don't get that lucky. So that's the number one thing. The others are like, you know, the more dangerous one would be not accepting blood transfusions from medical treatments. Like I'm like 90% sure my grandma died just because she didn't take a blood transfusion. I mean, she had cancer and she was going through a surgery, but the choice was blood transfusion or you're dying right now.
And they
And
just let her die.
and yeah, and she went and she it was her choice, but like was it her choice, you know? Um
Well, and if you're in that, I would imagine, so if like in her case, in her mind, fully believing in the religion, if she did cross that boundary and decide to take that, does that mean she's going to hell? What does she get? Does she then get disfellowshipped?
right, exactly. You could, yeah, let's just say you survived life-threatening. Let's say you get in a car accident right now and you get taken into the hospital, and within, like, let's just say they woke you up um on some sort of drugs, but you consent to a blood transfusion to save your own life, and you make it through, you might end up getting called into the little room, and then asked like, "Hey, why'd you take that blood transfusion to save your life? You know the rules." And chances are, like, you can be like, "Oh, like, I was drugged, I was under the influence of, like, the ketamine or the morphine or whatever, and, I wasn't within my right mind." They'd be like, "Okay." Maybe they'll do, like, a public censorship or something, or, like, a soft censorship, or it'd be like, "Hey, dude, I was gonna die, I didn't wanna die." And they're like, "Okay, well, you know the rules, you're disfellowshipped." And it could go like that, but most of the time people just die.
It's just insanity either way.
Yeah.
And those people, it's if you're at the point where you need a blood transfusion, a lot of the time you're not conscious. So like you might
Yeah.
get saved unknowingly unless, I don't know if I'm sure there's probably some people in the church who believe in that. So
You
they have like DNR bracelets on and stuff like that.
yes, you have like you are taught to like, go see a lawyer at one point and like have whatever thing on file that people know, let them die.
Like the advanced directive kind of stuff.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but
Yeah.
yeah. So
It's, I mean, it's a mind virus. And if you're in it, you're almost damned if you do, even if you start to wake up to it. Like you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't, because, all right, if you do believe in it and you think you're going to be judged by a higher entity for disobeying, there's that.
then
There is, or I could die, or I could go my own path and be dead to everyone that I know and love.
yeah, and there's people that live in the in between for sure.
Just kind of,
They're called
her,
they're called PMOs, physically in, mentally out.
but they're
Um,
there going through the motions kind of thing.
they're going through the motions, yeah, just because they don't want to lose their family.
I would imagine that's not. I would imagine that's a thing in other religions, like in Mormonism, in the Church of the Latter-day Saints, that there's in these anywhere where those tactics, those similar that excommunication is a core pillar of the way that the system functions. I would imagine that's pretty
Yeah, and
common.
what makes Mormonism a little bit like nicer or not so bad is that it's not completely homogenous. Like you could go to one Mormon church that takes themselves a little more seriously than the beat. Um, so they probably have the same base beliefs, but some of them are going to be a lot less strict than others. So, if you're born into the wrong one, like, sorry, that sucks. Or, you decide that the one you go to is a little too liberal, you go to the more strict one, it sucks for your family or whatever. But what's interesting about the Jehovah's Witness organization is that they are truly like, as far as quality control goes, like you go to one Kingdom Hall, it's the same the next. So like there's no difference. Like it's funny, like they really run like a corporation and they run a tight ship. So I don't know how I got there, but specifically, I think comparing it to Mormonism and how, you know, um, there's people that live, yeah, now I remember, there's people that live like physically in and kind of mentally out. Um, there's probably less of that, or even if they are living that life, they can still kind of live their life as they want to, especially if they decide like, oh, we're gonna switch to, let's just say I'm a Mormon, my family's super strict. I could move to like a more liberal Mormon church and my family's still going to be cool with me. I can still play the part and this church isn't going to be up my ass. It's not like
Yeah.
that. It's not like that for Jehovah's Witnesses. You can't like go through the
Pick and
motions.
choose, kind of.
Yeah, no, like you have to like going through the motions means it's still running your life. It's still completely controlling your life.
I've got I don't even remember what you just said exactly that reminded me of this, but one more sinister aspect that I was made aware of. I think you and I probably talked about it when I came down to Austin last year, but it came up again when I was reading about the religion, and if this is one of those areas where you're like, hey, I don't have experience, and that's fine, and just say that. But
Mhm.
in terms of there being, you know, crimes, whether it be basically if there's crimes in the church, and specifically I read about if there's sexual abuse allegations, the
Mhm.
the the elders, like one of the stipulations for something to be recognized as having happened is there has to have been someone has to have
Two
witnessed it.
witnesses.
Yeah, oh,
Mhm.
two.
Yes. There has
It's
to be a two witness. There's a two witness rule.
and
So
if there's
you
not two
have to
witnesses.
You have to, yeah, you have to molest someone in front of two of your peers, and they have to confirm it.
And if there's not two witnesses, then they just say it didn't happen and they cover it up.
Basically, like, yeah, and I do believe there's been a case in my family, if not multiple, of something like that, and um, yeah, people don't go to the authorities.
Which
That's the other
is
thing is you're told not to go seek for justice from the real world. Like it's gonna get handled here. And
but not
anything that
really.
yeah, but anything that actually they also have the belief that like anything that needs to come to light, like it will come to light, like God will make it happen. So, it's not quite the same as like, getting caught sneaking around or like, maybe having an affair that specifically, child um sexual abuse happens much more um secretively, and people are willing to go to the grave not admitting, as
That's a
opposed to if you get caught having an affair, you can be like, okay, yeah, you know, you caught me. People aren't gonna maybe, I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say here with that, but like,
they take a willful ignorance approach to it and
yeah,
just
and the a big part of it, I think, big picture wise for them is um they don't want to have it be in the news that there was somebody in a church that was taking advantage of their
um,
power.
that seems like the cornerstone of that.
Yeah, which is hilarious, especially being in the Hispanic congregation. Our big our big like enemy was the Catholic Church because everyone else that's Hispanic is Catholic, so that's mostly what we're working against. And so anything that a Catholic church did, we would point at it and like amplify it and be like, the pastor here over there screwing the kids, not realizing it's happening over here. We're actually doing a decent job of keeping it under wraps, but it's less under wraps now for sure.
Just more hand wavy shit. Or
Yes.
what they're like, don't look at the man behind the curtain. Like that is so it sounds cartoonish. Like that a lot of these things, and I mean that can be said about a lot of things about just human nature in general, but this I feel like out of everything that we've touched on today, that seems the most just bizarre and just it's you can't sit there and judge people who have been brought up in that system and don't know any different and haven't they just that's just what they know,
Mhm.
unfortunately, and that's sad, like you were born into that, and a lot of people are, and then maybe don't have the choice or the opportunity to ever have something happen where they do realize that there are other options and that they can make that choice because there's so much stacked against you.
Right. Oh yeah, it's and I could like I really appreciate like you being able to just kind of, you set me back in line a couple times and asking me these questions because we could keep going, dude. Like there's so much more to unpack here. It's insane. Like it's absolutely insane. I think I had a couple other bullet points for like the nefarious activity, but again, how long do we really want to go on? And this is also why I spare most people this conversation. Anytime they kind of show me any interest in this, I'm like, I don't really want like one, it's emotional for me, and two, like, how much of this is really like worth unpacking right now.
It's a
It's
can
gonna
of
just lead
worms.
to yeah, it's gonna keep leading to more and more questions, and is that really what we want to be doing, or do we want to just have a good time? Like
Yeah.
most of the time we're hanging out to have a good time right now. Let's focus on that, like
Well, I hope you realize with like me trying to bring you on track, that's just I know we have an hour. I know you've got a class you have to go teach. Like I just trying to keep the conversation moving in a directed way so that we can get to these things. I'm not like not trying to cut you off or anything like that. You know I love you. I'm
Oh no, yeah, I'm
okay.
saying I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Well, speaking of classes, you are the owner of Austin Jiu-Jitsu Collective in the one and only Austin, Texas. And
Yes, sir.
you want to tell everybody more about yourself in that realm and the gym, and then we can get out of here so you can get to work.
Sure. Funny enough, like part of what I want to get interviewed by, um, because there's other like ex Jehovah's Witness podcasts. There's really only like one that I wanted to be on his show, but like again, I didn't work my way up to like a high ranking within the church. There's people that with much crazier stories about really working their ways up and having these moments where their eyes were opened. I more than anything was kicked out by circumstance, and then I thought for myself in my time where I was being exiled, and then made my decision that I need to get away as far away as I can from my family and this whole situation. I went from being very angry at religion to being very angry at, of course, I don't know. Point being, like, I found my way to jujitsu, and I believe in, I think jujitsu could be a great path for anyone that like was Jehovah's Witness before. You're already used to being really dedicated to something. A lot of the things that I learned from the church, like now it just kind of transferred into me being a jujitsu coach. But I'm not saying you need to do jujitsu if you're next Jehovah's Witness. I'm saying, uh, you know, not getting so caught up in the identity of being an ex Jehovah's Witness and just finding the next thing. What are you gonna do next? And it could be jujitsu, it could be music, it could be, you know, anything at all. But whatever hustle and dedication you learn from the church, start applying that
Hookers and
outside.
blow.
Yes, it will get you somewhere for sure. I don't didn't tell you where, but it'll get you somewhere. But so yeah, now that's what I pretty much dedicate my life to is jujitsu, and I'm out here in Austin teaching, preaching the good word. Um, and I love my life now. I love where I ended up. I've met some amazing people on the way, and I say this because if you are currently a Jehovah's Witness, you probably didn't get to the end of this conversation. But if you are, trust me, there's a good life outside, and you can find something to dedicate yourself towards. And if you want someone to talk to in Austin, come visit me at my gym. Come see what my new cult's about.
Yeah. And for everyone who's not a Jehovah's Witness listening to this, oh, I mean, I guess even if there are Jehovah's Witnesses listening to this, Eric moved down to Austin specifically because some of the best, literally the best professionals in jiu-jitsu in the world are in Austin right now. And he moved down there to train under them and further his skills even more than he's already gained over the years that he has been training and to open this gym and make this happen. So go check him out if you're in that area. If you're at all interested, it's an incredible place to find a sense of community. Obviously, there's great instruction there as well, but and it's doing hard things is very valuable, and you're going to learn some self-defense along the way. So, Eric, if you got anything else you want to plug, I'll have links to all your stuff in the show notes.
Oh no, just Austin Jiu-Jitsu Collective. If you're interested, Google it. If not, Zach will have all my socials, I'm sure, plugged. So thanks for having me on, dude. This was
Yeah,
great.
thanks. Thanks for taking the time. Good luck at class tonight.
Of course.
And thanks everyone at home for listening to another episode of Going In Blind. Remember, if you haven't already, rate and review the show wherever you listened, and then share this episode around with someone who needs to hear it.